Okay, so imagine a world where like lost memories could, be found, like retrieved,
Mhm.
where the fog of cognitive decline, it kind of starts to lift. You shared some really fascinating stuff that well, it hints at this very thing. All this really cool research on how nanotech, quantum computing, and AI could all work together to like really address memory loss and cognitive problems,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to, dementia.
It is remarkable, isn't it? All the stuff you sent over suggests we might be really close to some really big changes in how we think about and treat these conditions.
Yeah, absolutely. For this deep dive, then, we're going to look at two main areas. First, we'll explore the basic science behind all of this, like how could quantum mechanics actually be related to consciousness,
Hmm.
and how can we use these quantum technologies to build like super sophisticated brain models and develop like really advanced cognitive tools and
Yeah.
even personalized treatment. So that's the first part. And then we'll dive into the practical applications, all the wearable and implantable devices that could actually make these concepts a reality
Hmm.
for people who are, facing these challenges every day.
Right. Our goal today is to really pull out the most interesting insights from all of this. We want to give you a solid grasp of the potential breakthroughs and the science behind them, but without getting too lost in the weeds. So
Hmm.
we'll explore what these technologies are actually trying to do, the methods they might use, and why this is such a critical area of research. Not just for those dealing with cognitive decline, but for anyone who's fascinated by the future of, the brain and the mind.
Okay, so like, how do we even begin to understand something as complex as the brain using something like, quantum computing? I mean, where do we even start?
Well, I think one of the most striking things in the material you shared is how incredibly powerful quantum computing could be when it comes to, dealing with really, really complex systems. And the brain is about as complex as it gets, right? Billions and billions of interconnected neurons.
Yeah, I mean, you can't get much more complex than the human brain.
Right. So your sources, they emphasize that quantum computing has this unique ability to simulate these incredibly intricate and interconnected systems, which makes it amazingly well suited for unraveling the brain's complexities, even potentially replicating brain functions that have been, damaged or impaired. Because even the most powerful classical computers we have now, they really struggle to simulate something like a full neural network. Just because of the sheer scale of it, all the dynamic connections. Quantum computers, though, they leverage quantum phenomena like superposition and entanglement, and they could potentially perform these simulations. They could do it on a completely different level.
So how does all that theoretical power translate into actually helping someone who's, experiencing memory loss or cognitive decline? Like, how do we get from these quantum simulations to real world benefits?
So one really crucial area that your sources highlight is this idea of quantum brain modeling. The main goal here is to create really detailed simulations of the brain's neural activity. The idea is to understand and maybe even be able to recreate the cognitive processes that are lost in conditions like dementia.
Okay, so it's like we're building a super sophisticated digital copy of the brain,
Yeah.
but powered by quantum computing.
Right, exactly. The approach outlined in the material involves using quantum simulations to map out the brain's intricate network, all the neurons, the synapses, and the different pathways. It's incredibly detailed. And the really fascinating thing is that we might be able to use quantum properties like entanglement, where two particles are linked no matter how far apart, and superposition, where a system can be in multiple states at once. These could allow us to capture those brain processes in a way that classical models just can't.
So we're talking about like how memories are formed, how they're retrieved, all of that.
Right, all those incredibly complex dynamic processes. It's not a straightforward linear process. And quantum mechanics just seems better equipped to handle that complexity.
I mean, that sounds incredibly ambitious. So are we talking like static blueprints here, or something more dynamic?
The sources, they actually talk about developing what they call neuromorphic quantum models, and
Yeah.
these would be quantum neural networks, so QNNs, specifically designed to mimic the brain's activity patterns. The idea is if we can create these dynamic models, we might be able to not only predict how memory loss will progress in someone with dementia, but also figure out ways to restore those lost
So
functions.
we get to like observe how different parts of the brain are working together when someone's recalling a memory. And then use that information to figure out where things are breaking down in a brain that's, affected by disease. And then maybe even figure out how to fix it.
Exactly. By modeling those interactions during conscious thought, we can start to, pinpoint the specific deficits. And then these models could even suggest very targeted interventions, maybe a particular type of cognitive training, or even a way to stimulate certain neural pathways.
It's like having a weather forecasting system, but for the brain.
That's a great analogy. Now, building on the idea of modeling, your sources also talk about quantum-assisted cognitive prosthetics. And this shifts the focus from just understanding the brain to actually using that knowledge to create devices that can directly help with memory and decision making.
So less about creating a brain model and more about like actually helping the brain do its thing.
Right. The objective is to develop AI-powered cognitive aids, but with a big boost from quantum computing. The idea is, by using quantum machine learning algorithms, we can make AI much better at processing and even reconstructing fragmented memories.
Okay, so how would quantum computing actually give AI that extra edge when it comes to memory?
Well, one of the key concepts they mention is the possibility of reconstructing incomplete memories by using quantum superposition. So imagine a memory that's fragmented, it's incomplete, it exists in multiple possible states at the same time, a bit like a blurry image where there are several potential clear versions kind of overlaid on top of each other. Quantum enhanced AI could theoretically explore all those possibilities at once, and that would allow it to put together memories that a classical AI, which processes things sequentially, might miss completely.
Hmm.
Also, these systems could simulate different routes to a memory. So it's like training the brain to strengthen those connections.
So for someone who's struggling to, remember a name or a specific event, the AI wouldn't just be searching a database. It would be actively helping the brain piece that memory back together.
That's exactly the potential here. And the sources even give a hypothetical example. It would be a wearable brain-computer interface or a BCI that would connect wirelessly to quantum computing systems up in the cloud. This setup could allow for real-time processing and restoration of lost memory functions as they're needed.
A wearable BCI tapping into quantum power in the cloud. I mean, that sounds like science fiction.
It does. It
Yeah.
does, but it's based on the potential of these technologies all working together. And then there's a third aspect of this quantum approach. They call it quantum AI for personalized therapies. And this is all about, taking that power of quantum enhanced AI and using it to create truly individualized treatment plans for people with cognitive decline.
Okay, so instead of a one-size-fits-all treatment, it's more like a custom-tailored approach.
Yes, exactly. So the idea is to train quantum machine learning models using tons of data that's specific to each patient. Things like brain scans, the results from cognitive tests, even their medical history, and then use those models to simulate different strategies for rewiring those neural pathways.
So we could actually see how different therapies might work for a specific person before even trying them out.
Right, that's the hope. By simulating those strategies, we can identify the most promising ways to, recover memory and improve cognitive function for each individual. And the sources even mention the possibility of using augmented reality or virtual reality to give real-time feedback to patients and caregivers. So it's like guiding them through those personalized therapies.
It's like having a quantum-powered AI-driven coach for your brain.
Yeah.
So far we've been talking about the potential of quantum computing, but the material you sent, it also dives into something even more fundamental. The idea that consciousness itself might be like a quantum process. Now that's where things get, really interesting.
Yeah. It does get fascinating there. So the sources introduce this theory called orchestrated objective reduction, or ORCHEOR. And this theory proposes that, consciousness might not just come from the complex network of neurons. It might actually come from these quantum level processes happening inside these tiny structures called microtubules within the neurons.
Microtubules. Now those are usually talked about as like part of the cell's structural framework,
Yeah.
right, in biology.
Right, they're known for that. But the Orkawar theory suggests that they might also be where these fundamental quantum computations that are the basis of consciousness are taking place. Now, it's a hotly debated theory, but it's incredibly intriguing. And if it turns out to be true, it could open up some really remarkable possibilities for restoring cognitive abilities.
So how could understanding those quantum processes in these tiny structures help with something like dementia?
So one area they're exploring is quantum microtubule enhancement. The goal here is to try to stimulate or even mimic those quantum processes within the microtubules to restore cognitive functions. They're researching how a quantum property called coherence, basically how long these delicate quantum states can last within the microtubules, might influence things like memory formation, attention, problem solving.
And if we could figure out that connection, how could we intervene therapeutically?
The sources suggest developing quantum-based neurostimulation tools,
Mhm.
maybe very focused forms of TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation, or DBS, deep brain stimulation. And those could specifically enhance that quantum coherence within the microtubules. Now, the potential applications, they could be huge. Maybe improving the brain's ability to change and reorganize itself. That's what we call neural plasticity. And maybe even reversing some of the neural degeneration that happens in conditions like dementia.
So instead of just stimulating large areas of the brain, we could be fine-tuning the stimulation like at a quantum level within individual neurons.
That's the long-term goal. And building on this idea of quantum mechanics being involved, they also talk about quantum neuroplasticity. And here the goal is to use quantum principles to boost the brain's natural ability to repair and reorganize itself.
Okay, so how would quantum mechanics actually influence something like neuroplasticity, which seems, so biological?
So the idea is to design algorithms that can identify networks of neurons that are entangled or highly correlated in their activity. And these networks they might be disrupted in conditions like dementia. The theory suggests that these networks might depend on a level of coordinated activity that has quantum-like characteristics. By simulating those quantum neural pathways, we might discover ways to reconnect those damaged circuits, and that's what they're calling quantum-inspired therapies.
So it's not just about rewiring the physical connections, but maybe influencing this deeper level of communication that might be quantum in nature.
Right. And finally, within this realm of consciousness research, there's the concept of conscious state restoration. And the goal here is to use quantum simulations to try and restore the specific states of consciousness that are linked to memory and to our sense of self. Those are often severely affected by dementia.
So how would we even begin to like restore a conscious state using quantum tech? It's such an abstract concept.
Well, the first step, according to the sources, is to map what they call the neural correlates of consciousness, or NCCs, and those are the specific brain activity patterns that match up with different conscious experiences. And we'd use AI, enhanced by quantum computing, to do this mapping. The goal is to understand how certain conscious states, like the feeling of recalling a specific memory, are encoded in these quantum-like interactions in the brain. Once we understand that encoding, then we can try to use targeted quantum neurostimulation to actually trigger those states or even recreate them.
It's an incredibly ambitious goal to be able to like bring someone back to a specific moment of consciousness that
Oh,
they've lost.
yeah.
Okay, so we've talked about the foundational science. Let's shift gears and talk about how this quantum technology could actually become, real tools, practical solutions for restoring cognitive function.
Absolutely. And your sources, they highlight several key areas where this quantum tech could offer real benefits. One is the development of what they call hybrid quantum classical AI systems. The main idea is to combine the strengths of classical AI, which is great at handling lots of data, with the simulation power of quantum systems, particularly for modeling things like memory formation.
So it's like each type of computing does what it's best at.
Exactly. So, for example, classical AI could be used to process the huge data sets we get from brain imaging, like EEG or fMRI. It could identify the patterns and anomalies, and then the quantum systems could take over and simulate the underlying neural processes that could lead to more accurate diagnoses and more effective treatment.
Yeah. Yeah, it makes sense to use both. And what about other practical applications? What else is on the horizon?
Well, another really promising area is quantum neuroimaging.
Mhm.
The idea here is to develop advanced brain imaging systems that are powered by quantum technology. The goal is to achieve a level of precision that's just unheard of right now.
So what kind of advantages would that offer compared to, the MRI or PET scans we have now?
Well, we could get much higher resolution images, which means we could see much finer details of the brain activity, the structure of the neural networks. We might even be able to detect really subtle changes that could be signs of cognitive decline starting even years before they become apparent with current methods. And of course, that precision would be incredibly valuable for targeting treatment.
Yeah, early detection is key with any, progressive condition.
Right.
And beyond just imaging, what about treatments themselves?
Right. And that brings us to drug discovery for cognitive restoration. This is where quantum computing could really, really revolutionize how we develop new medications. The idea is to use quantum simulations to model the interactions between different molecules, which is incredibly complex. This could help us understand how potential drugs might interact with the proteins involved in Alzheimer's disease, like beta amyloid and tau.
So instead of years of trial and error in the lab,
Yeah.
we could use quantum computers to figure out which drugs are likely to be effective and safe.
Exactly. By modeling those interactions and predicting how a drug will work and what its side effects might be, we could dramatically speed up the whole drug discovery process and potentially find treatments that can slow down or even reverse the neural degeneration.
That would be a game changer for so many people. Now, you also sent me a workflow for quantum consciousness solutions,
Yeah.
like a step-by-step plan for how to take all these ideas and make them a reality.
Right, right. So this workflow, it has three phases. The first is the research phase, which is all about, exploring those quantum theories of consciousness, like OR2R. And it emphasizes the need for collaboration between physicists and neuroscientists to map those neural correlates of consciousness.
So really building a solid foundation.
Yes. Exactly. Then comes the prototype development phase. And this is where the theory starts to become something tangible. This is where they'd build and test quantum neural networks to simulate cognitive processes. And they'd also develop those wearable BCIs integrated with the quantum cloud systems to create those cognitive prosthetics.
So taking those complex models and turning them into, actual devices.
Right. And then the third critical phase is testing and deployment. And this is where they would conduct really rigorous trials, first with animal models, and then if those are successful with human patients, they would validate how well these solutions actually work using things like fMRI and EEG data and cognitive performance tests. And if those trials show that these solutions are beneficial, then comes the really important part, which is, making sure these technologies are available to the people who need them.
It's a comprehensive plan
Hmm.
from research to real world application. Now let's move on to those tangible applications you mentioned. All those wearable and implantable devices that could actually interact with the brain to help restore memory and cognitive function. Let's start with the wearable technologies.
Okay, so the sources, they describe several really compelling wearable device concepts. One is the smart neurostimulation wearable, and they envision this as a headband or a cap. It would use non-invasive neurostimulation to target specific brain regions involved in memory and motor control. So areas like the prefrontal cortex or the hippocampus.
So it's like applying electrical stimulation to the brain, but through a wearable device.
Yeah, in essence. But the key here is the AI. It would be constantly monitoring the user's behavior, picking up on any signs of cognitive problems, and then it would adjust the stimulation in real time to provide truly personalized treatment. And they'd use nanotechnology to make incredibly thin, flexible nanoelectrodes. So it would be, very precise stimulation without any discomfort. And then quantum enhanced signal processing, that could really improve how accurately we decode those neural signals and fine-tune the stimulation protocols.
So what kind of help could this device actually provide to someone with cognitive decline?
They suggest it could help patients remember how to do basic daily tasks like swallowing, standing up, brushing their teeth by directly stimulating the right neural pathways. It could also give them little reminders, auditory or tactile cues to do certain actions when they need to.
That could make a huge difference in terms of maintaining independence and just improving their quality of life, even for people with significant cognitive impairment. What other wearables are they looking at?
Another interesting one is the AI-powered memory prosthetic watch. And this would be like a wristband or a smartwatch that would give real-time assistance with memory using AI reminders and sensory feedback. It would have biometric sensors to monitor things like heart rate, stress levels, even signs of neural activity to detect when the user is, having trouble.
Hmm.
They even talk about nanobiosensors that could detect changes in neurotransmitter levels.
Mhm.
And again, they would use quantum AI to analyze all of that data in real time to predict when help is needed and to give those timely reminders.
So if someone's about to forget to take their medication, the watch could remind them.
Yes, exactly. Or it could remind them to chew their food or to swallow or to take a drink. It could even guide them through their daily routine step by step.
It's like a really proactive and almost like intuitive form of support.
Right.
What about helping them with things like navigating familiar environments or remembering faces?
Right. So for that, they have the wearable AR glasses for cognitive assistance. These would be augmented reality glasses that would use AI to analyze their surroundings and then give them helpful reminders, overlaid on their view of the world, like virtual arrows pointing them to the bathroom or highlighting a specific object. Nanotechnology would allow them to integrate really tiny eye tracking sensors so it could detect moments of confusion based on their gaze patterns. And quantum enhanced signal processing that would allow the glasses to adapt what they're showing the person based on what they're seeing and hearing in real time.
So if they seem confused looking at the kitchen counter, the glasses might remind them what they were looking for.
Exactly. Or it could show them the name of a family member when that person comes into view.
Yeah, that could be incredibly helpful for reducing anxiety and helping them with social interactions. Okay, so is there one more wearable concept?
Yes. They also talk about a wearable neurofeedback device. And this would probably be a headband with EEG sensors. It would provide real-time neurofeedback and maybe even stimulate those memory-related brain areas using, visual or auditory cues. So the AI would analyze the EEG data, looking for patterns of memory lapses or cognitive fatigue, and they'd use nanoscale EEG electrodes to get really accurate readings. And again, quantum AI would be used for analyzing that neural data.
So this device could actually help the brain strengthen those memory pathways.
Right, maybe by making neurofeedback exercises more like games, or by delivering targeted stimulation to specific neural networks. So those are the wearables.
Totally.
Now, shifting gears, your sources also go into detail about some really amazing implantable devices for cognitive restoration.
This is where, the technology really gets advanced, like directly interfacing with the brain itself.
Yeah, exactly. So first up, there's the neural implant for memory reconstruction. This would be a BCI implanted right into the brain, probably in areas like the hippocampus, which is really important for memory. And it would have AI on board that would try to predict missing parts of memories and then try to reconstruct them based on the patterns of brain activity. They'd use nanoscale electrodes for very precise stimulation and recording, and they'd use quantum-inspired computational models to figure out the most effective stimulation patterns for triggering memory retrieval.
So it's not just about helping them remember, it's about trying to rebuild those lost memories.
That's the long-term goal. And this implant could also help restore basic motor functions like chewing and swallowing by targeting those circuits.
I mean, that could be life-changing for people who've lost those abilities. What other implantable technologies are they exploring?
Yeah. Well, there's nanobot-assisted synaptic repair, and this is where they introduce tiny nanorobots into the brain. And these nanobots would use nanotechnology to find areas of damage at the synapse level, those connections between neurons, and then deliver neuroprotective agents right to those spots. They could even repair the damaged connections by depositing these nanoscale materials, and quantum sensors would help them, navigate that complex brain environment.
It's like tiny microscopic surgeons working at a cellular level.
Right. Their job would be to repair those connections that are essential for memory and for basic movement, and they could also help reduce inflammation in the brain.
That's an incredibly targeted and minimally invasive approach. And the final type of implantable device.
So that's the implantable neurostimulation chip. It would be a chip implanted surgically with sophisticated AI that learns the patient's own brain activity patterns, and then it uses that information to adjust how it stimulates the brain. The goal is to help restore both procedural memory, like remembering how to do tasks, and episodic memory, which is remembering events. Nanotechnology would make the implantation minimally invasive, and quantum AI algorithms would predict the best stimulation to trigger specific memories or actions.
So this chip could help someone remember how to tie their shoes or a specific event from their past.
That's the potential. Now, they also talk about hybrid solutions. These would combine wearables and implantables with AI, nanotech, and quantum computing.
So a more comprehensive approach.
Right. So, one example is an AI integrated biomarker monitoring system. It would use both wearable sensors and implanted nanosensors to constantly monitor a whole bunch of biological markers. And then all of that data would be analyzed using AI and quantum computing to predict cognitive decline and to adjust the treatment. Another really fascinating idea is the quantum enhanced cognitive twin. And this would be like a digital replica of the patient's cognitive system built using AI, quantum mechanics, and data from those implanted nanosensors. And they could use this digital twin to simulate how different therapies might work before actually trying them on the patient.
Like a virtual testing ground for personalized treatment.
Exactly. And they also lay out a development roadmap for all of this. It's a phased approach over about 36 months, starting with research and prototyping, then rigorous testing, and then scaling up production.
Okay, and what about that overarching vision they call Entangleverse? What's that all about?
So the idea behind Entangleverse is that by understanding those potential quantum aspects of consciousness and then using AI and nanotechnology, we can create a future where we can actually restore all sorts of cognitive abilities, understand consciousness better, and develop really impactful healthcare technologies.
It's a powerful vision. So to sum up this deep dive, we've explored this amazing convergence of quantum mechanics, nanotechnology, and AI, and how they could completely change how we understand and treat cognitive decline. From quantum computers that can simulate the brain to personalized devices, the field of cognitive restoration is about to go through a major transformation.
Yeah, and it's incredible to think that quantum mechanics, which we usually associate with the very small, might hold the key to understanding and even restoring something as complex as human consciousness. The idea of entangled brain networks and being able to influence them with quantum tech, it's mind-blowing.
And for anyone listening who wants to understand, complex topics quickly and thoroughly, this should give you a glimpse into a future where technology could offer real hope for people dealing with dementia and other cognitive problems. And this isn't just theory. The roadmap they've laid out suggests that these concepts are moving towards real-world application.
It really is a lot to think about. All these quantum processes that might be happening in our brains right now. It opens up so many possibilities, both for science and for how we think about ourselves.
Absolutely. Well, on that note, let's wrap up this deep dive. Thank you for joining us, and until next time, keep exploring.
Thank you.